Welcome to Executives at the Edge, a podcast brought to you by MEF. I'm your host, Pascal Menezes. Join me as we explore thought-provoking perspectives from the leaders and changemakers who are propelling enterprise digital transformation forward. I'm really so excited to have Keri Gilder. She's the Chief Executive Officer from Colt Technology Services. And today I'm really excited about this episode because we're going to cover things on quantum computing and AI and, disparity and how NaaS plays a role in bringing the whole ecosystem together in one big federation. And Keri, welcome to Executives at the Edge. And for our listeners, can you give us a little background about yourself and Colt Technology Service itself?
Yeah, happy to, and very excited to be here. So thanks for having me. As Pascal stated, I'm Keri Gilder. I'm the CEO of Colt, and I have been the CEO for 5 years now. I think I was also the 5th female CEO in the world, so in telecommunications. So I grew up in the engineering space. I am a techie at heart, and I love telecommunications and connecting the world, and that's exactly what Colt does. We connect over 34 countries around the world with fiber and data and voice services.
So, Keri, thank you. That's a really great background and, very impressive, and congratulations for being the 5th. And I know more and more we're seeing CEOs that are females, and I think it's just amazing. And I think you bring a really great perspective to the whole industry, so thank you. There's been a lot of innovation that's been transforming during the last digital revolution. So we've been seeing this digital revolution that continues to evolve with all the enterprises. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what you're seeing as CEO?
Yeah, I think the pace of change is just incredible right now. We saw the Industrial Revolution, and I hate to age myself, but I was a part of when the internet started. I was one of the original testers of TCP/IP, actually, for IBM back in 1992. And in 93, the internet obviously took off. And if you fast forward from back then to where we are today, it's absolutely phenomenal. We're not only connected around the globe with tens of thousands of telecommunications, cloud providers. Now we're seeing GPU as a service start propping up as enterprise AI starts rolling out, at scale. And I think that AI and quantum in particular, these two technologies are going to leapfrog what we've seen as far as the R&D kind of cycle over the last few years. We've seen that cycle. You think about Murphy's Law, you think about 2.5 years almost of an innovation cycle. And I think we're now seeing that in months, not years. And so it's an exciting time to be a part of tech.
Now, curious, how do you see quantum? I mean, of course, quantum has the ability to do parallel processing, and it's based on superpositions and entanglement and all the principles of quantum physics. And it's a perfect compute paradigm for AI, which needs parallel processing for these models using transformer architectures. How do you see this coming into a network that enables, obviously network can be more AI driven, but how do you see that business alignment to networks? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the use cases are still in proof of concept state in some areas, and in some areas we're already seeing some production value. And you look at the chat AI bots that have been created for the customer experience side of the business, and you're already seeing pretty significant productivity gains, as well as the ability to respond better, get better net promoter scores associated with that customer experience. And so I think there's definitely productivity gains that we'll see in our business. And we also see the opportunity for revenue generation with AI, and those use cases are starting to come forward as well. You look at pharmaceuticals, their ability to be able to test proteins, test antibodies, test all the different medicines that they're developing for different sicknesses. And that has just been able to ramp up where they used to do maybe 20 labs, they can now do 200, 2,000 labs in a day. And so I think we're going to see this mass transformation in some of the industries like pharmaceutical and like manufacturing in particular, where we are going to see more product come out and drive revenue for these companies a lot faster than it was before. If you look at telecommunications, I think there's a great opportunity with AI and with quantum when it comes to security and being able to actually see abnormalities on the network. And I think that's where I'm excited to see the technology go and us start to do some proof of concepts and start to adopt some of this technology, because it can actually sense an abnormal routine, and that could help us be significantly more predictive in the way that we're responding to different threats that are coming onto the infrastructures.
No, absolutely brilliant use cases. I think there's just so many more. I've been told computer vision is the lowest hanging fruit. Everybody's using computer vision now to do all kinds of things, from checking manufacturing defects to retailing, shoplifting, identifying people and their buying patterns, even though that's probably a violation of privacy. But it just goes on. And I think we're just a start. And I think many people feel that AI will replace them. Do you think it's more augmentative or replacement? Because I know many people think, oh, my job's at risk, so I'm going to be all replaced by AI and so on. Any thoughts on that?
I think we've seen it throughout technology. I think there's, IoT or automatic cars, or all of these were meant to replace people. And the reality is a lot of times it actually creates more jobs. And so I think, yes, there are jobs that will no longer exist. If I look back to 1993 when the internet started, 24% of the companies that exist today didn't exist back then. So I do see new jobs and new opportunities start to come to the forefront. So I don't think jobs will be replaced. I think skills will be replaced. And I think we have to be open to the opportunities to learn, to train, to adapt as the technology advances into these new skills, and so that we can actually work side by side with the technology rather than the technology taking over our jobs. I do think it's going to be augmentation, and it's going to be an opportunity for a lot of people to advance in their careers, but maybe not in the linear way that they thought they were going to.
So true. And I see the same thing. Coders, where instead of, of course they can generate code, but it helps the developer, and then the developer can finally, tune that code better, and then maybe give it back to the AI model and say, hey, do you see anything weird? So I think it's kind of like a AI assistant in every way, and not a replacement for a human being. So I totally concur. Now, what about disparity in the industry? We talked about retraining. Where do you see disparity?
I think there's a massive issue with upskilling right now. I did a lot of work. I've done a lot of work over the years on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the number one thing that I actually saw, which was really interesting, was that we can actually get a lot of people into the industry that are diverse, but keeping them is the problem. And where I see disparity is actually in that talent base right now, and how we're thinking about upskilling, reskilling talent. I think we need some significant effort around this. And I'm working with different organizations like ITP, for example, here in the UK, that is driving apprenticeships. And there are apprenticeships in everything. There are apprenticeships, yes, in rolling out fiber for us, but there are also apprenticeships in data science and AI. And I think that's where we have to start thinking about where those skill sets are going to be coming from, you don't necessarily need a degree today in AI because everybody's learning it from scratch. You can have a degree in something else as long as you're willing to learn and open your mind. And maybe it's good that you have the business skills, for example, and we're an accountant and want to actually go and do data science on the technology side. It's possible. And I think that's the exciting part right now. But I do think we need to think differently about and more formulaically about how we actually look at talent. And that's where I think disparity kind of sits. I'm not sure if that was your question that you wanted to ask, but.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. Because, I don't know if many people know this about my son, but my son is absolutely brilliant. And of course, every person thinks their children are brilliant, but he's done some very interesting things. He grew up as a young kid and coded by, 10 languages by the age of 14. He actually got into Y Combinator, which is very hard to get in, which basically incubates and treats you to be an entrepreneur. And then he started his own, startup. But one of the things he did after, that startup, he wanted to teach underprivileged kids how to code. Because like himself, he said, I owe it to the world to bring coding to these underprivileged children all over the world. And so he took in specifically the age group of high schools to just, young adults into college. And he found that when he looked at the computer science programs, they were really old and archaic. And so he's made it a mission, and he's done brilliant across the planet now. He's called Code Day, and a little plug for him, but I think it just hats off to what you just described, that we are fundamentally missing the era of training our people to be relevant in an age that is moving at lightning speed, especially with AI, quantum computing, automation. It just goes on. And I find that, and coding is very critical to all of this, because software paradigm has taken over, even networking, as you know. So I think, when you talk about disparity, I think it's really powerful. And I love the fact that we're seeing women now in the workplace that are getting really involved, and we're seeing, multicultural kind of heritages come in, different points of view. And I think that's the essence of how, you move forward as a society. So do I have that right? Or do you have any more thoughts on that before we move on?
I think you're absolutely correct. And wow, hats off to your son. He sounds amazing. I'd love to meet him someday because he sounds just like an incredible human being. What I would say is, when you think about disparity, when you think about talent, diversity, equity, inclusion, there's a couple things that come to mind. One, I think we think that we're making more progress than we actually are. During COVID, we actually went backwards. And now, unfortunately, because of the tech layoffs that have happened and the telco layoffs that have happened and continue to happen, what we're actually seeing is a disproportionate of layoffs of women, and particularly Black women. And because of that, we were on a trajectory to basically hit equity in about 90 years, as according to the UN. And now we're at 130 years, because the support roles are where the female talent was coming into. And unfortunately, those are the ones that are highest affected when transformation or, operational efficiency and layoffs happen within tech. And so I think it's one area in particular that we really need to focus on, which is how do we get the diverse talent into the companies? That's actually not that hard to do. What's hard to do is train them quickly on some of the next generation capabilities that are required and move them from these support roles into other roles like coding, like data science, et cetera, engineering, in order to get them a more secure foundation for the future. And so I think some of those things we don't really think about until you see the data in front of you, but data never lies, or sometimes it does, but the data that I have on this doesn't. And so I think that's critical. I think the other thing that's interesting, and we talk about disparity, there's one piece of data that I learned recently that I just thought was really curious. As we all talk about AI and we all talk about bias associated with AI. And what I actually found out is it's not because the majority of the coders are men that are coding AI. It's because there's only 2% of either female created data or female data on the internet. And so we all know the foundation of AI is only as good as the data it served. And so if the data that it served has a disproportionate amount of data associated with females, then this is a social problem. It's not an AI problem. And I think, it's just, we need to dig a little bit deeper, like your son is doing, going out and bringing these parts of the world into the digital universe by helping underserved individuals learn how to code. I think we also, as we go into AI, we have to be honest with ourselves about the data that we're using, as well as how we actually can move some of this diverse talent, in other parts of the organization to make sure that we can keep them whole along their career paths.
Yeah, no, it's a really amazing statistics you bring out, Keri. So thank you. And I feel like we don't really educate our society well enough for the new upcoming, the technology revolution that's coming out in information communication and technology. So changing topics, what I want to know is, you're on the CEO advisory board, NaaS, network as a service. It's been around for a long time, but it was kind of like an old model. The newer NaaS is all about cloud, on-ramp, cybersecurity, connectivity. What are your thoughts on the NaaS market? I think you are a NaaS offering yourself and pioneered a lot of that too, right? It's Colt.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to give my company a bit of a plug now, but we won 6 awards at the recent MEF Summit, NaaS Summit, and 2 of those were pretty substantial. One was Global Leader of the Year, and the other one was European Leader of the Year. And I think when you think about NaaS, Colt has always been seen as an innovator in this space, but you're right, it's been around for a very long time. I think now is when it's starting to get some traction, because networks are more software oriented, and they're more of a marketplace than they used to be. There's the ability for us to present our networks in a software-based marketplace, if we expose inventory. And I think that as I look at NaaS in the future in NaaS, it's all around the customer experience, the end-to-end customer experience. I call it the easy button. And I think that's what you have to look at it as, is how easy am I making it for my customer to be able to connect globally, wherever, whenever, and however they want. And it's as simple as that. And so flexing on demand, being able to have a 1-hour contract, for 100 gig, a 10 gig, a 1 gig, whatever it is, being able to offer security services, being able to offer CPU hardware services in difficult places to buy hardware. These are all related to NaaS, and they're all related to making that customer experience as easy as possible when we're dealing with a very complex technology and we're dealing with a very complex geopolitical environment.
And that's, you brilliantly said, it's such a simple idea. Like, the customer experience want a cloud-like delivery model, and they want to be able to just turn up, turn down, be elastic, and it should happen instantly. And they shouldn't really think about where this connectivity or the cybersecurity happens. It should happen from their point of view globally. But as you know, Keri, it's a lot challenging than just saying, okay, because Colt has a great footprint, and you've got access to many, many buildings all over Europe and the world, but you can't cover every point of the world. So, and we've been trying at MEF to try to bring in this ecosystem, this ability to what we call federation, but to just federate and just connect together in a very seamless way to enable that experience for the enterprise. Any last thoughts before we wrap up here on that? Potential
I would
of
say,
industry
listen,
coming together?
I still believe in the federation. I still believe that partnerships are the future of networking, and this industry knows how to partner better than most because we have to. Like you said, there's no one operator that owns every connection point in the world. There's no one cloud provider that owns every connection point in the world. And so we have to work together, and we have. That's why we've built protocols like BGP in order to ensure that we have that interconnectivity and we can work across and connect our customers across the entire globe, regardless of whose network it's on. And I think if we think about that concept of a global network, and we think about those connection points, and we open our minds just a little bit to standardizing our portfolios, with MEF, making sure that we have the APIs that are, the MEF Sonata APIs, and we're agreeing on what those standards could be, then it is possible. But that agreement is harder than it seems. And we've tried this for many, many years, and it's been very difficult. What I will say is I think we're on the cusp. Colt is working with a couple other providers around the world to try to make this happen and working with the MEF in order to enable that understanding, that definition of what those product definitions and those APIs should look like. And I think there is an opportunity, and there are a few willing members within the MEF that could possibly bring this to life in the next year. So I'd say stay tuned on this one because I think it's going to happen.
Well, that's great to hear that optimism, Keri. I also highly believe in that too. Keri, I want to thank you for your time. I think our listeners are going to be so fascinated with the variety of topics we just covered. So again, thank you for taking your time. I know it's late, your time in the evening in London. So again, have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for Executives at the Edge. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe today. Share online a review. Find all our episodes on your favorite podcast platform and at MEF.net.